The Nature Photo Guys podcast is brought to you by our friends at the Camera Store, located in Calgary, Alberta, Canada.
It's our go-to spot for everything photography and video. Whether you're just starting out or you're a seasoned pro, the Camera Store has what you need.
And the best part, they ship right across Canada with free shipping on most orders over $99.
The Camera Store is a legendary name in photography, so make sure to check them out today at camerastore.com.
Welcome to the Nature Photo Guys podcast,
where we talk about nature photography, from gear to our philosophies and everything in between.
So grab a cup of coffee, sit back and relax.
You're listening to Joe Desjardins
and Chris Gibbs, the Nature Photo Guys.
Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Nature Photo Guys podcast.
Today's guest is a visual storyteller, a seeker of solitude, and someone who feels most at home where the wild things are. An adventure, landscape, and portrait photographer raised on the rugged shores of Newfoundland and Labrador, he considers Nunavut his second home and the planet his canvas. With over a decade spent in the Canadian Arctic and countless journeys through places like Greenland, Antarctica, and the Gobi Desert, his work captures not just what these places look like, but what they feel like. Every image speaks to the themes of isolation, resilience, culture, and connection. Whether working with world-class athletes, guiding workshops in polar regions, or bringing environmental initiatives to life, his goal is simple: to tell stories that move people, and maybe get a laugh or two along the way. Please welcome to the show, Curtis Jones.
Hey Curtis, welcome to the show.
Welcome, Curtis.
Hello, thank you.
It was a pleasure hooking up with you there at Light Chasers. It's been a while, actually. I saw you at the first one.
Yeah.
And it was good to see you back with Chris doing your presentation to end things there. So yeah, Chris, yeah, for sure.
You guys did a great tag team presentation. It was awesome. So
yeah,
I'm glad you guys enjoyed it. We weren't sure how it was going to flow, but I don't know. I think it went okay, especially considering the nature of the conference and everything like that.
Oh, absolutely.
It was a fun experience.
Great PowerPoint. Love the images and stuff. And, we were actually thinking about having both of you on at the same time, but Chris and I were thinking, that might be cool, for another show. But right now we really kind of wanted to get to know each of you, how you guys started and, and how you ended up where you're at. Right. So
deep dive.
Deep dive. We've got about 107 questions here for you. So we should.
That's my lucky number.
There you go.
Perfect.
Awesome.
This is going to be working wonderfully.
So here we go. Actually, so looking at your bio, it looks like your need to explore started really early as a child and camping out and exploring the bog. So maybe tell us a little bit about yourself from your days of junior exploring to becoming a pharmacist to exploring the high Arctic.
Yeah, the story does take like a hard sort of right-hand turn there in the middle.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah,
but I do think now that I'm a little older and I've done it quite a bit, and we all look back on it, I do see how my childhood is very much like the start of everything for me. Mm-hmm. Like most of us, I didn't go far necessarily from home, but I was always out looking for something, right?
Sure.
Looking what's on the other side of that fence, what's beyond, what's above this hilltop, what's on the other side of the tree line. If I go through the woods in this direction, where does it bring me? Yeah. Trying to just map out my own backyard basically. And I grew up in a time and with a family that, was really supportive of that kind of stuff, like the keeping an eye, but from a distance on us kids. So my cousins and I, we just had free reign of whatever wilderness we could find. And it always felt like we were just off doing our own thing, under our own momentum and steam. But now I'm older and I know that the adults weren't that far away, keeping an eye on things most of the time.
Yeah.
And that was in Newfoundland, right? You grew up in Newfoundland?
That was in Newfoundland, yeah. So I grew up in a small town, a Blake town, just maybe an hour-ish west of St. John's in Newfoundland.
Oh, okay.
And spent a lot of time outside, either for play or for, chores or whatever. Like I said, I grew up close to cousins, grandparents, aunts and uncles, that kind of stuff. So had like a lot of good sort of mentors, I think, with being outside and making connections to the outdoors.
Oh yeah,
and really connecting to nature. So
yeah, family support, having that sounds amazing, actually.
Yeah, and just like listening to their, not necessarily these grand folklore tales, although there were those, but just the daily sort of tales around the table when my aunts and uncles or grandparents were having a cup of tea about like hunting or collecting firewood or fixing an engine on something or building a cabin on a different piece of property. That kind of stuff always sort of like sparked an interest in me. And then, being kids, you go and try to do a similar thing. So you take your bike apart, you try to put it back together, you build a tree house, it falls down. You catch squirrels and for whatever reason, train them and release them on your younger brother. But like all of that stuff, all of those things just seem like, open season. Like it really did feel like you could do anything and go anywhere, even though I wasn't going that far from my house.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
And I think that translated into, this career now where I go quite far from home.
No kidding.
Yeah, no kidding. Jeez.
Okay, cool. So, I mean, like you said, a hard right. So kid, outdoors, exploring, pharmacy. So
how did that work?
Yeah. Like how did you come to that?
Well, there's this other side of my personality that I've come to terms with that's much more practical and craves order, I think, and structure. And so I graduated high school. I didn't really have a plan other than actually I was always somewhat artistic, painting, drawing, whatever. And my parents were very supportive of that and actually suggested that I go to school for something like that, design, graphic art, something. And I was the person that was like, no, I have to go to university and do some sort of science degree. Don't really know what. And so that's what I did. I kind of just went into university thinking that's what I was supposed to do. And I didn't want art to necessarily be my source of income. Even in high school, I was doing some of it, like just small gigs for money kind of thing, artwork. And I didn't enjoy the pressure of having to create for money, even at that age. And I kind of was like, no, I think I just want my job to be separate from that sort of thing. So I went into university and started doing sciences, chemistry, biochemistry, physics, and stuff like that, biology, and quickly realized that I didn't actually want to work in a lab. So ended up applying to get into pharmacy school, kind of more on not really a whim. It was a calculated assessment, I guess, of like what options I had. I looked at the different degrees. I looked at my grades in certain subjects. I looked at how many courses I wouldn't have to do in the first like couple semesters because I had already done them and thought, I'd have a couple easy semesters. Like these are the decisions of a 20-year-old.
100%. Yeah.
And I got into pharmacy. And then once I was in, I've also sort of this side of my personality that was just like, I don't think this is for me. Within 1 week, I was like, this isn't right, but I'm not going to quit. I'm going to finish it. I've spent all this time in school. I'm collecting student loan debt. There's stuff like that going on. So I knew I wanted to finish that, get through school, and at least have sort of that in my back pocket. And then when I graduated, I started taking work as a pharmacist. Eventually, though, it became quickly obvious, like the jobs I was taking, very remote communities in Newfoundland, or, the big move up to the Canadian Arctic that was based on pharmacy. There was like a position, a posting to work on Baffin Island. And I was like, that sounds like, that's where I need to go. And I wasn't really chasing pharmacy at that point. I think I was just looking for more of the same adventure, see what else is out there. And pharmacy was like an avenue or a vehicle at that point. But I always think I kind of knew it wasn't going to be permanent.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. Exploring all these communities that you could actually get out and adventure while you're working there. And so you always had it on the side, but then, I mean, that makes sense. So
I never got to the point where I hated what I was doing. I just didn't like it a whole lot. Like I wasn't getting out of bed every morning and be like, oh, I can't believe I have to go in the pharmacy today and deal with this and deal with that. There was always an element of, I do enjoy the work. I enjoy like interacting with people and problem solving and that kind of stuff. But there was a very obvious point where I was taking a small lunch break in sort of the back room of the pharmacy. And there was like this stack of photo magazines. I used to go to the front of the department store I was working in, where the pharmacy was in the back, and I would pick up a photo magazine or something like that from the checkout and bring it back. And that pile was like growing, and then all these pharmacy journals on the other side were just tipping over, and I was like never looking at these things. And so I was like, I got to make a choice here.
So what? Well, before I ask you what job you transitioned to from pharmacy, the whole idea behind taking a camera with you to your a fun trip, I think, with your friends to Greenland. So at this time, you weren't really doing photography, were you?
I was very much like most people would be, say, with their phones now. If you're an outdoors person and you're hiking, you're climbing, you're skiing, whatever you're doing, everyone's got a phone, and usually people are taking photos and documenting it in some way, shape, or form. Pictures of themselves, pictures of friends, of the activity, a sunset, but not really paying attention to photography. I was just taking pictures for the sake of collecting memories, I guess. And also being away from home for one of the first times, a significant distance, living in the North, and the North being a very different place, even though it's within Canada. It does feel like you're going to a different country almost. And so back then in the early 2000s, I didn't know much about Nunavut or Baffin Island or like Inuit culture or anything like that. And I knew that most of the people back home, my family, didn't know much about it. So it was also a way for me to send them photos with the emails and whatnot that I was sending, to kind of just show them the place and the people I was meeting and the kind of stuff that I was doing. And the culture and stuff like that. And yeah, that was more or less the reason I was carrying a camera around at that point. And I did enjoy it probably more than most people. Like, I do enjoy doing the activities, but I started to feel like this compulsion to also document it with a little more intention, I guess, to like be a little more strategic, get people to like actually, even though I didn't really know how to pose anybody, but you know what I mean? Like noticing things like light and being like, oh, wait a second, this looks better than this other thing, kind of. But again, not thinking of myself as a photographer, or it could be a career path until the Greenland bombshell.
So what happened there? From what I read, it was a trip with some friends, and they asked you to bring the camera because you're the only one with a camera, or you just purchased a camera. Yeah,
it was just a very logical choice. It's two friends of mine. They were brother and sister, Sarah and Eric McNair Landry, who were from Nunavut, and I got to know them quite well. They were younger than me, so I was like the elder statesman, and they had along with their mother had a team or a couple teams of sled dogs, and they would often bring, clients and guests out on sled dog tours, or they would just keep the dogs as part of the culture. And I was, living with them for a little bit, and we were really close. So like a few of us sort of orphans in the territory, we got to know that family, got to learn how to take care of sled dogs, how to run dogs, things like that. And it was after a game of broomball, of all things. We were at a bar eating wings, and Sarah asked me if I wanted to go to Greenland with her and Eric, and basically just ski across the ice sheet and use kites, so snow kite and ski. And I was just like, yeah, of course I do, right? Like, I'm a few drinks in. We just played broomball, of all things. It's the North. It's the middle of the week. You kind of just roll with it. It feels like the Wild West a little bit. Not really thinking much about it. And but then when I went to work the next morning, and she came into the pharmacy and kind of like straight up asked me again, she's like, no, this is a serious thing. Like, we're going to go. And we'd like you to come along. Then I took, I went over for a cup of coffee, and we broke it down a bit more. And what it was they grew up in a family of adventurers and polar explorers. So both their parents, Maddie and Paul, are incredibly famous for polar and Arctic exploration and guiding. And the Eric and Sarah also were coming up into that world and doing their own thing. And they wanted to start doing trips that kind of differentiated themselves a little bit from their parents' legacy, I guess, and something that was their own. So they're planning this whole trip by themselves. They're in their early 20s at this point, to traverse the Greenland ice sheet from the south to the north. And they needed it to be 3 people. Sarah was making a film. Eric was basically like tech support and everything else. And then they had a third person, a photographer that was documenting, because they had sponsors and people like that they needed to collect footage for. Their photographer that they had, I forget what it was exactly that happened, but it was some sort of life thing. I don't know if it was a child or a medical thing. There was a reason that he had to bail a few months before they were supposed to head out. And so I was just more of an option that was available, someone that they knew we could kind of get along, the 3 of us, in a tent for 60 days. And I happened to kind of, on a surface level, know my way around a camera. But the reality was that I remember having a conversation in Montreal while we were packing up just days before our flights. And their father, Paul, was asking me about RAW. And I was like, what? And he's like, well, these cameras shoot RAW, but this one doesn't. So make sure that you're, whatever you're doing, this and this and this. And I was like, what are you talking about? Like, what is he talking about? And that was the first clue, my first inclination that I was like, oh, wait a minute. I don't think I actually know what I'm doing.
You got in a little deeper than you thought.
Yeah. This might actually be a little more serious and legitimate than just randomly taking photos of friends to send home. But we went, we got through it. I ended up having to, just backtracking a little bit from that. I ended up going into my work the next day after a coffee and asking for some time off to train and then to go do the trip, which would take a couple months. So I was looking for 3-ish months to take from work. And they were like, no, that's impossible. That's not how this works. And I was like, okay, that's fine. And then I thought about it. And then I went back up after lunch. I was like, I think I have to quit. And so I put my notice in and went downstairs and finished up 2 weeks of work or whatever. And then just went as much as I could. I just tried to learn how to ski, how to winter camp, how to snow kite, learn as much as I could about photography.
Wow, that's amazing.
Do all that kind of stuff in preparation to fly over to Greenland and do this unsupported trip, which at the time, and I mean, it still is quite a cool thing, but at the time there weren't many people doing trips like that. It was 45 days on the ice, I think, and over 2,300 kilometers. And there's just the 3 of us. So it was unsupported. We didn't see anybody else. We brought all of our own supplies, our own fuel, all start to finish. So no caches, no depots, nothing like that.
Wow. Holy jeez.
And after that, I mean, that was my first paying gig, real job as a photographer. And the number one client, the person that they had a 2-year license for all the footage, video and photo, was National Geographic. So because again, it was one of these times, that was the first photo job I had. It was at this time when still a lot of, and to this day, it's still kind of like this, but back then even more so, it wasn't so much about the talent of the photographer or the filmmaker as it was about access to some of these areas, like the ice sheet. Climate change was still something that we were talking about it, but not in the sense that we are now, 20 plus years later. So getting footage of the glacier, calving and coming apart, and getting footage from the top of the ice sheet and doing that. And we were checking with schools along the way as best we could over satellite phones and talking to classrooms and stuff. And so I never really for once thought that I was National Geographic quality photographer. It was just more an opportunity, and there's nobody else up at the ice sheet collecting footage. So they're like, yeah, we'll take this random guy's photos, I suppose, and tell this story. And they did. And then I after that was over and I didn't die in a crevasse, there was this running gag with friends back in Nunavut. They're taking bets on whether or how I would die and who would be first to eat me, Sarah or Eric.
Wow.
Luckily, we didn't have to get to that. We got off safely. No big injuries. It was actually like a really fun trip. I mean, I do feel like I went a little bit insane up there. You spend 12 hours a day just listening to the same 24 songs you have on your little MP3 player back then.
Right.
Not talking to anybody because it's too cold to take your gear off. And then in the tent at night, we had 3 books. We just kept reading them over and over and telling each other like fan fiction stories we'd make up about the characters in the books, and then playing cards. And you hear every story that all those other 2 people have ever told. You start making up your own stories. Like I was writing episodes of Seinfeld in my head. I was building houses in my head. I was like living alternate timelines in different universes. Like there's no TV, there's no radio, there's no internet, there's not anything, right?
Yeah.
And then the other thing that comes up is all this other stuff. Stuff you're not thinking about and dealing with. Like I quit my job. My girlfriend and I at the time had decided to separate. I sold my truck. I sold basically everything I had. Didn't have like any plans other than go to the ice sheet and try to cross it with these 2 people, which seemed like I was embracing adventure, right? I was like, yeah, I'm doing it. And then, 3 weeks into it, up on top of the ice sheet, 3 days into a whiteout storm in a tent with 2 people with nothing to say to each other, you start going like, well, I guess I have to deal with a lot of these things that are just been like bouncing around in my head for the last 30 years, and that I haven't really like figured out. So there's nowhere to turn. Nowadays in regular life, if you don't actually sit down and try to deal with your stuff, you can often find easy distractions. You can, I have to take the garbage out, or I have to go get groceries, or, I was going to watch the show on Netflix, or there's this work I have to do or whatever. But in the absence of everything else taking your attention away, you're only left with so much before you have to start dealing with things. So in that way, it was a struggle. It was much more of a mental struggle for me than it was a physical one, which I didn't think. I thought I would literally like die in a crevasse.
Right.
And I came out the other side of this thing thinking I was like ready for the world as a photographer. I was like, this is it now. I've done like the hardest job you can do. So let's go. Having never booked a client, didn't know how to make a website, didn't know how to pitch, had never done any of that stuff.
Wow.
So I was in for a pretty rude awakening. I was full of unearned confidence. That's for sure.
No kidding.
So what was next then when you came back and you didn't have a vehicle, probably a place to live? Were you extending your Greenland kind of adventure back home, living in a tent, skiing to the grocery store,
I'd like to say that I spent my time up there figuring out an awesome game plan, but I did not. I came home and realized, looks like I'm moving back in with my folks for a bit.
Yeah.
Sure.
And not like full time, but there was a point about a week or 2 into being back in Canada. And I was like, what time it was, but it was later in the morning for sure. And I saw my parents were up and about and they were going about their day and getting work done. And I was, rolling off the couch into a bowl of half-eaten cereal, wondering what's on television and being like, this can't be right. Like, this isn't what I'm supposed to do. So I went to the city and I bought a car. I bought a Toyota Matrix, which I still have. It's still the car I have today. This thing is still kicking like 17 plus years later.
What?
No kidding.
And I bought that car, and then I made plans to drive across Canada and meet up with some friends in Vancouver. And then we went up to Squamish and Whistler, and I spent some time climbing over there. And then I remember being in Squamish and checking my email at the library, because that's what we did. We didn't have smartphones and stuff back then. And I went to the library to check my email, and I had a friend who I went to pharmacy school with who had moved to the States, and he was going to Europe and he needed a travel buddy. And again, it was another one. I don't know what it is about me. I'm nobody's first choice, but it was somebody had bailed on him. And then he was like looking for options. And it's like, I don't have this aura of like, well, it's not our first choice, but he's dependable if we need him. And he was going to Europe to travel with no real agenda, or, I had a couple of destinations in mind. And I didn't have anything else going on. And I wanted to see the world and travel. And I thought, like, this is another chance for me to get out and see more and maybe hone my skills as a photographer or storyteller or whatever. So I got in my car after that and I drove right back to Newfoundland as fast as I could. And I got on a plane and flew to Dublin and met him. And then we traveled around Europe for a bit. Yeah, and I came back to Canada after that and that's when I realized, okay, now you have to like get a job. You have to do something.
And
yep.
What was the job? I'm just curious.
So, because I wasn't really, I always could, I had the option to go back and do pharmacy, but I didn't want to. And not like, again, as I said before, not because I hated the job, but I just didn't like the idea of backtracking. So I thought, well, maybe I'm not ready for full-time photography because I don't really know what that means or how to make money, but I do need money. So I applied for a couple jobs with the government in Nunavut as a communications officer. And at the time, what that meant was you needed to have some experience in communications, some with like, they were looking for someone who could handle website work, photography, a little bit of design work. And I had been doing like some online classes and courses in communications and design while like in between. I make it sound like I was just like bumming around, sleeping on couches, but I was actually kind of working towards a bit more of this like communications, design, photography, kind of just getting a little bit of training. And so I got the job, surprisingly. And yeah, I was kind of like a government photographer / designer for a bit. And that sort of gave me the opportunity to figure out the lay of the land a bit better. And I started taking, work as a photographer as well on top of that, doing what everyone does kind of in the beginning, portraits, weddings, pet photography, selling landscape photos, calendars at like community art fairs or whatever, that kind of stuff.
Just
trying to license images. Yeah, like anything you have to do, like trying a little bit of everything because I didn't know what kind of photography I really wanted to do. And then also figuring out what stuff pays, what stuff am I good at, what am I suited for. So there was some of that while I was working with the government. And then that kind of all culminated in me deciding that I wanted I didn't really want to do, I was kind of on the fence between going all in with design work or all in with photography. And I decided I think it was going to be photography. So I tried that for a while and I worked as a freelance photographer in the north for a bit, just, photo guy for hire, right? Anything.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Yeah.
Which worked out pretty good. And that was still at a time when you could license images, especially to companies and organizations and government departments for a reasonable amount of money. Whereas now I think it's much more, it's not impossible, but it's much more difficult to
absolutely,
to make a living, at least. It could be part of your income, but to call it a full-time or a huge part of your living is a little more difficult nowadays, especially for, nature and landscape photographers. So I was doing that for a while, but then I was like, okay, I have to get better at other aspects of photography other than what I felt very much like I was safe in the north. I had clients in the north, but if I ever wanted to move from the north or try, other types of photography, I really didn't have that skill set or those connections or a network. So I decided to come back south and then spend a little bit of time traveling around. I could have went back to school. I thought I had a little bit of money saved up for, photography, or, which is what I did, I just kind of sought out mentors and took workshops from people that I admired their work, or I would reach out to online and they seemed like people that I could hang out with and spend time with. So I was lucky enough to meet some of those people and get some real world connections and experience with them. People like Dave Rocha and Paul Zitzka and like all those guys. And then it kind of just kept kind of going along in smaller, a little amounts along the way. I still had this connection in the north. I still went back up there for work. I still did photo work in the north. But I was trying to like more and more engage with, Newfoundland again and Southern Canada as well. And build up more of a portfolio with travel photography, less so just like Arctic photography, I guess.
Sure.
Nice.
So at what point did you learn about RAW? Or was it Dave Broshar or Paul Zitzka, or was it
well before that?
No, I learned it was very much on my Greenland trip. Yeah. I learned all about raw. I mean, there's raw photography, and then there's like taking a snow bath.
Right.
That's pretty raw.
Yeah.
Well, and that's what I'm curious about. You accepted this trip to Greenland. You're like, okay, I got this camera. Like, what camera did you have? Like, did you think of how am I going to charge these batteries, and how did that progress from there?
Yeah, I mean, I really did rely a lot on Sarah and Eric for that, because they like, as much as I didn't know, they knew a lot, even though they were young.
Sure.
And I was there to like snap the photos and take the photos and stuff. And I was also kind of there as a third. They very much knew themselves. They knew that they would often be on the other side of things. Like if it was a debate over, should we keep going? Should we play it safe? Should we push? Should we, change our route or whatever? They often would just come straight down the middle. So they needed a tiebreaker. And that was kind of one of my roles as well, just to sort of, which is, I think was very smart and mature of them to know that they would want that. But they also had done enough trips with their parents and things that they kind of had like the charging systems. It was all solar. We had, different, it was chaotic for sure, trying to charge all these different batteries and things.
Sure.
I remember we had a little Palm Pilot.
I remember those. Wow.
And I think it was so we could like text. I think it was connected to the satellite phone in some way, and we could text these little like really short messages out, just little updates of our lat and long and stuff like that. And we were doing okay, or we're moving camp tonight, or blah blah blah. Because it was 24 hours of daylight too, so it didn't matter. We just kind of got up and went with the wind.
Sure.
Didn't matter when you ate or
hence
slept.
The solar, I guess. Yeah, that came in handy. Yeah,
exactly. And I had that Palm Pilot one morning. I was so tired, and I just remember having a cup of hot chocolate and the Palm Pilot just like dunking in it. And I was like, oh no, like we've got a handful, very few, like a couple ways to connect to the outside world. And I just put one of them in like a steaming hot cup of hot chocolate. It was like, and I was not a fan favorite for like most of that day.
Yeah, no kidding.
For sure.
That must have been a big cup of hot chocolate of the Palm.
Yeah, because they weren't sleek designs back then. No. But yeah, to answer your question, we had solar. Eric really was like kind of a tech genius. He had it all figured out, and the best way and the most efficient way to charge things. I was using a Canon Rebel, one of the early ones. Like this would have been 2004-ish.
Oh yeah, like an XT or XTI or something like that, or yeah,
exactly, something fairly early. And then I had a backup camera, which was this like little point and shoot Nikon Coolpix. And that was it. I was going in,
man. Nat Geo all the way, right?
I look at those photos now, and I'm just like, oh man, they're just so horrible. Like, even like from compositionally, like atrocious, but just like, not really having a handle on the range and limitations of the gear, right? Like ISO and the exposure values. And even though I was shooting in manual, I know I wasn't making the best use of what that camera could do even back then. Yeah.
So you're still a Canon shooter today, or?
Yeah, still shooting Canon. I shoot. Now it's the R5 series. But that's, I haven't really, I kind of played for a little while there. I was playing around with Sony for a bit. It confused me. So I'm back in Canon. I've taught a lot of photography now, and a lot of like camera operation to a lot of different people. And even though the operating systems do take a little bit to wrap your head around sometimes between the different manufacturers, like I've not noticed much difference in quality amongst any of the top brands anymore. If you've got like a decent sensor and a good lens in front of it, like nice glass, like it really does. It's kind of nice because it's a level playing field again now. Like it really does come down to the photographer and the creator more so than the tools, which is nice.
I would agree 100%. Yeah, for sure.
There's lots of good products out there. That's for sure. So what lenses are you using today? It's obviously specific to the role that you're shooting at the time, but is there any favorite lenses that you're using with the R5 series there? Or?
Yeah, I honestly think that, especially like, let's say for example, the work I do in Antarctica as a photo guide down there, I could do or I do most of that work with the 1-500
Mm-hmm.
RF lens and the 24-70. I can do 99.9% of what I need to do down there.
Perfect.
Which is good because then it's like 2 bodies with a lens and a lens.
And that's
nice
it.
and compact.
Yeah.
And then there's other times like I'll take down. I've got like some of my older lenses, like a 70-200, and a 35 and a 50. That sometimes I'll take out because I'm doing more and more. I'm doing video work down there as well, and it's nice to just get. I don't know. There's something about fixed focal length for filming that I like more than zoom.
Oh, me too. Yeah.
I don't know why.
Yeah.
But yeah, I kind of like how it just puts me in a box and I have to like just, and then when you edit the footage, it all kind of makes sense. It's not 16 and now this is like 35 and this one's 40 and the next one's 200 and like,
right.
So yeah, so I do take those lenses, but for like the meat and potatoes of the work, the 1-500 and the 24-70.
So you're basically entire RF lenses as well. You still have EF lenses or
no? I still have EF lenses.
Oh,
yeah,
you do,
the 35, the 50, and the 70-200 are all EF.
Okay, yeah.
I have a 16-35. There's 24. There's like probably 4 24-105s kicking around here somewhere.
Which are still amazing lenses. I mean, I'm still using my 70-200 from 2012 or whatever, the Mark II.
Exactly.
Right? I mean, they're great lenses still. So.
Yeah, and no loss of autofocus speed or light or anything with those EF to RF adapters. So I don't even have an RF lens yet. I still got all my old glass just because of that reason. There was no need to upgrade for $20,000 to replace like a 500 or something like that, right? So
the only reason I got the 1-500 a few years back was that I had a 1-400. And I had like the 1.4 and the 2 times extender. And I did notice that my 1-400 was like really not getting, it was softer than I wanted it to be with the combo on the R5 with like at the time, the R5 before the 2 was out or whatever, and the R6 II and all that stuff. The auto tracking and the animal tracking and all that, shooting birds from the back deck, albatross and stuff like that. I was finding that it wasn't really hitting for me the way I would have hoped. And so I decided to try the 1-500 and it's kind of a nutso combination, to be honest. I'm sure every manufacturer has a version of that combo that, every photographer will also say, yeah, this is like the one.
Right.
And also like my jobs usually are a mix of wildlife, landscapes, and like photojournalism. So as much as I'd love to carry down like a 400 prime or something like that for some beautiful wildlife shots, it's just too big, too much glass. And I barely ever have a chance to actually use it in my day to day. For the amount that it costs. I'd love to own a couple. There's some photographers here in Newfoundland. I go out taking photos of whales and stuff in the summertime, and they've got like 300 primes and 400 primes, and at sunset, backlit, like it looks pretty amazing for sure.
For sure.
I recently upgraded the 100 to 400 as well to the 100 to 500, primarily just because it has the extra stabilization for handheld video as well, right? So definitely, it definitely is noticeable. I found. I don't know if you found that as well, but
yeah. I mean, I'm trying to shoot from Zodiacs and stuff like that. It's we were out with some friends and I were just hiking a couple days ago, and I took some short video clips. With the 1-500 actually handheld, and he was just like, how is it so smooth?
Right.
And I was like, all of my practice pretty much has been like on bobbing, moving Zodiacs.
Oh,
so
nice.
Like my whole body just becomes like a gimbal, I think.
Yeah.
That's perfect.
Yeah.
No kidding. You don't want to rest that on something and on the boat, I guess, eh? So
When did you transition to video? Like, was that years ago, or did you notice a trend because of social media, or was it clients asking for more? Like photo and video.
I think yes is the answer to all of those questions. I do know there was a point where I realized that people were asking for video. And I also noticed that I felt like there was a point also where I wasn't really getting tired of photography personally, but I was having a hard time finding a path forward for myself that wasn't similar, I guess, to like some of the other photographers that I was around. And then not in a way that I think like I was copying or they were copying, but it just felt like there was a point where social media was really, and Instagram was really blowing up, where everybody was putting out kind of the same sort of stuff because that's what it wanted. And this is before reels and all that kind of stuff. And I kept thinking like, it'd be nice for me to find something that's for me. Like I'll keep shooting and if I don't attach again money to video, maybe video could be a fun thing for me to try to learn and just keep my kind of hone my skills a bit. Because I also remember like my partner Renee, she knows way more about filmmaking and stuff and cinematography than I ever did, and she'd watch movies and break it down, you know, the compositions from the director of photography and all that kind of stuff, and why they chose certain glass and movements. And I was always like, just whatever, like get to the action. Like I didn't have any interest in any like figuring out why it looked the way it looked. And then once I started sort of intentionally trying to focus a little bit more on video and filming, I realized I could rewatch all these movies that I love. And I started seeing all these like different patterns and things. And now I'm obsessed with all that kind of stuff. And then it really kind of became a thing for me, a combination of two things. And that was the COVID pandemic, where we were all kind of like, I couldn't travel anymore. None of us could travel. And travel was the bulk of almost all my paid work, and I had nothing to do. So I said, oh, you know what? I've always talked about learning video a bit more, but I'm not really good at just learning for the sake of learning. So I needed a project. I needed a focus. So I started the YouTube channel. I was like, I'll just do like a Newfoundland photo YouTube channel, and it'll force me to do a couple things: learn how to speak on camera, learn how to film, how to like take B-roll, how to like actually do audio. I didn't know how to do any of that really. And it did, like, I really did start to figure that stuff out and troubleshoot through it with low stakes, no pressure, because it was a YouTube channel that I didn't really think anybody was ever going to see, and nobody really did ever see it. You know what I mean? And it's not active. I don't really do much with it now, but it served a purpose for me at that time. It kept me focused. It helped me learn a new skill set. And then when the world did kind of open up again, I went back down to Antarctica very shortly after. And up to that point, my Antarctic contracts had been 100% stills. And I remember being on that first voyage afterwards and thinking, you know what, like I've got this whole new skill set and I like telling stories this way. And I think it's like a fun way to tell the story. So I'm going to start doing video down here. And after one or two sailings, you know, what started out as like 10%, 15% video, I was like pretty straight up 50-50 video to stills. And this last season, coming back at the end of March, there were sailings where I was like, you know, it's 80% video. That's kind of what I want to do or whatever. Right.
Oh,
so
crazy.
Totally.
Yeah. Because the other thing is like, and this is going to sound like something that's not really like, it's not really a problem or a complaint, but if you go to a certain place with a certain subject matter over and over and over again, and in a season, you know, you might go to the same landings in Antarctica, the same penguin colony, you know, 8 times. You only need so many photos of that penguin in that colony before you start thinking, well, what else can I do here that's creative or special or unique to this trip for me, but also for the clients, right? Like how can I document this place that's different and special for them? And that's what video was able to offer me in that particular role. So since that, I really leaned into it more, less for my own stuff, even though I would like to start kind of like building out more of my own personal work. I've got tons of video that I've taken. I just haven't assembled for different projects, but more so doing it for other people, for clients, for other photographers, other businesses, stuff like that.
Cool.
Nice. That's awesome. I kind of did the same thing. I mean, on the nature side, we were all, you know, there was 10 of us taking photos of the same elk, and, you know, why am I not, we're all going to try to sell the same piece of artwork. So, you know, so I started capturing video, and I honestly today, I mean, I get my photos, but like 85% of what I'm doing now in nature is video as well. And just to be able to capture that behavior, and sometimes you can tell a bit more story from the video than the photo. Right. So,
yeah, it's one of those things. I think that it's a great, they're obviously well paired as skill sets. Anybody would be doing themselves a favor to learn a little bit about either or, if you're a videographer or a photographer.
For sure. Yeah.
And in the world, if our biggest competition is like more and more is AI, then you kind of do want to be able to be a little more authentically telling stories, and video, at least for now, seems to be a place where you can do that a bit more. And photography, I think, will also be and is starting to become very much that again, where people are wanting to and audiences are kind of demanding real stuff.
Sure.
And video is one way of showing people that that's what you're doing, right? So this whole idea of documenting your process. So even in that sense, even if all you're using is your phone, I think video is a great little tool set for photographers. Even
behind the scenes content, right? Just showing
exactly.
That. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Oh, it's great for social media. I know people just ask for it. We get emails about, when you're in the fields, camera setup, how you approach animals, landscape, that sort of thing. But can you maybe touch on how you approach social media? Because I know for myself personally, I only got into video because Instagram wanted reels. And I was really pushing back on video because it just, maybe I didn't understand it. I really enjoyed taking photos. That's all I ever did. And so I just wondering your thoughts about social media and whether or not it's that swayed any of your decisions, to move in that direction, or just in general.
It totally has. Yeah. I'm not like immune to what social media and the effects that it has on us as just human beings, especially artists or creative people, or you're putting your stuff out there, and as much as we like to say it doesn't matter if it doesn't actually matter the likes. What matters is you do want people to see it and engage with it, right?
Sure.
Like there's part of us that want to share our stories and have people, even if it's one person, but you do want somebody to see and engage with it. So I think the problem was that that's fine, and that's totally perfect human behavior, and that's kind of the point. But then social media kind of turned that into, like we all know, this thing where we weren't really chasing like real engagement. We were chasing numbers and algorithms and and that kind of stuff. And I had a hard time with that. I still do. I haven't found a good way, to be honest, to deal with it. It's either I'm really into it for a little while. So if it's reels, for example, I, like you, was like, I'm not doing that. That's ridiculous. Because to me, it was born from TikTok. And every time I looked at TikTok, and I haven't had TikTok on my phone or as an app in years. But when it did first come out, and everybody, we all started a TikTok account and all this kind of stuff, everything I saw on there, I was just like, this has nothing to do with anything that I do. So obviously I'm not going to do this. And then the photographers on TikTok that start blowing up, I was like, oh, wait, this could be a tool for business. But then quickly I sort of invest in it a little bit and be like, oh, this is kind of exciting because I'm educating, I'm showing people behind the scenes, I'm talking about my process, and this is all the stuff that I really want. This is the engagement I was looking for. But that engagement and that becomes like a self-fulfilling prophecy too, where it's like the minute you try to step out of that box, it gets shot down and nobody wants anything different. Like it's like, or it only lasts for so long, or you're just one of, you're one of 2,000 other people doing a Lightroom, a 10-second Lightroom tutorial on Reels or TikTok or whatever, which I think is great. But I think you have to like doing that and being that person. Then it works well.
Sure. Yeah.
But for me, I was doing it because I thought maybe this is what we're all supposed to be doing. So it just always felt like catch up for me. It always felt like we're chasing, getting the thing. The dog gets the car, and then it becomes a bus. And then you got to chase. The dog gets the bus and it becomes a dump truck. So,
and that stuff becomes forced almost, right? And it shows on camera too, right?
Yeah. And so anytime I tried to do that in any significant way with strategy, it all fell apart within a couple weeks to a month. And I would end up penduluming to like just avoiding social media altogether, just not posting on Facebook, on Instagram, anywhere. not even putting work on my website, not whatever, just like totally going the opposite direction. It was very like hot or cold for me. And it actually, and I'm not great at it. I do still ebb and flow, but the balance that I've found now, the stuff that I actually enjoy has less to do with photography and more to do with if I'm posting reels or anything like that, it's usually me out going for a hike or sitting by the ocean and just, talking about nothing or talking a little bit about, the history of this place or the tree that's in front of me or whatever, or a little bit of Newfoundland culture or folklore or something. Or it's me struggling to figure out, a new jacket or whatever. Like it's silly, impromptu, very casual. And I actually enjoy putting that online. I enjoy editing those reels. I enjoy seeing how people receive them. I don't do it enough, but at least it's something that I like to do. And I know when I do it, I do enjoy it. And I found that that's probably as good as it's going to get for me when it comes to social media as far as strategy goes.
You're being authentic to yourself, right? So you do you. You don't worry about everybody else or what the algorithm is this week or next week, or if you enjoy doing it, just post it, and I'm sure your audience will enjoy the content you put out there for sure.
Yeah, you be you, right? And you got a bit of a comedic spin on it as well, which is always fun. It gets people interested. So
I figured out really early with that YouTube project or experiment that the stuff that I like to do and the stuff that people responded to was just all the fallout. It was like the mistakes, the bloopers, the stuff that didn't like really educate anybody about photography. People responded a little bit to like, the tips and tricks, I guess. Yeah. But the stuff that people really commented on and the stuff that seemed to like push forward and forward was, was just, me falling down a hill basically, or, my hat blowing off midway through a very serious presentation about composition.
The stuff they can relate to, right? You know?
We just want to take a quick break to give a shout out to our title sponsor, The Camera Store in Calgary, Alberta.
The Camera Store is where we go for all our photography and video gear. Whether you're a beginner or a seasoned professional, they've got you covered.
Plus, they ship right across Canada with free shipping on most orders over $99. You can find everything you need at thecamerastore.com.
Yeah. And also as you guys know, like the doing the video, that's part of it, but then editing, that's a whole nother beast. And that's something else I didn't really realize, is like how difficult and how much work it is to edit. And, I'm still, really figuring a lot out. But I enjoyed editing stories and clips that were funny and kind of off-putting and off kilter and didn't really follow a formula that well. So that's the kind of stuff that I liked doing. That's the kind of stuff that people responded to a bit more. I think my biggest challenge is not so much figuring, because I figured out like what authentically feels like me, but it is in the doing the work and committing, because it's still one of these things where social media still requires you to be committed for it to add up to anything.
Sure. True.
So it's either just like, you're just journaling every day and it doesn't matter if anybody sees it or not. You just do it whenever you want, which is fine. I think there's like a place for that. But as a strategy to build an audience and to engage with a community, you still have to commit. You still have to be on top of it, right? You still have to have some sort of strategy. And that's where I struggle personally.
Sure.
Okay. So Chris and I really want you to go into that FOMO story. Right?
Oh, yeah.
That article, because Chris and I truly suffer from FOMO. I've talked
Especially
about it
Joe.
so many times. Oh, it's crazy.
Joe has severe FOMO. So when I was reading that article, I was like, oh my God, this is...
Which article? I feel like I've written about FOMO a few times.
It was a blog on your website. You're talking about, you were trying to find a sunset. And then should I turn down this road or should I go here? And then
rabbit.
Rabbit. Yeah.
Rabbit.
Epic
photos of rabbits.
Yeah. Oh, and that was an early YouTube video attempt or whatever. That's why I had gone out there.
Oh, was it?
Another part of that story
Sure.
is that, and another part about YouTube, and probably why I have to like figure out, because I would like to continue YouTube. I'm just trying to figure out, like we just talked about, a way to do it that's sustainable for me.
Sure. So it doesn't feel forced and work.
It doesn't feel forced, and it doesn't like take me a week to film and produce every single video.
Yeah.
And if it does, like I want it to not feel forced and feel authentic. Right? If it's going to take me that long, I kind of want to have it be something I can be proud of, and not just something that's carbon copy, knock it out. So I'm working around, but back then when I was like just basically using YouTube as a way to figure out how to do video and how to talk on camera, I was going outside with the intent, hey, this is what I figured out. And maybe you guys, because you're in this world, have a solution for me. But I got so frustrated the number of times I go out to film a video, put all this effort into like location scouting, planning, the perfect day. You have to line up a few days to edit this thing. But at the end of one of those trips, just come away with no photo that was worth showing the world. Because that's nature photography. Like you don't, every time you go outside, you don't get a banger, like not, you know what I mean? Like, so sometimes it just doesn't work. And that pressure of having to, document and film yourself and go through all the motions to put this YouTube thing together. And then at the end of it, the big payoff is just like a blah. It's like a photo that I would not actually post anywhere. I didn't really get anything. That was like so frustrating for me because it was happening a lot. And this was one of those times where I went to this specific location just to do a video. And I had it in my mind what it was I wanted to achieve. I'd been to this spot many times before. I thought it would be a great location. But I left late like we often do. I was like, moving as fast as I could. I knew the sun was going down. I didn't in the back of my head, I knew exactly where I was going to go. And you get out on the location, you have no idea where you're going to set up. And, it's like one of those things where you put your tripod in one place, your bag is somewhere else. Like you've laid a filter down and like something's in the back seat. Nobody knows where your keys are. And then you've got like multiple options. I try to be as much like someone like Paul as I can be, where he's just like so on it and dialed into like the amount that he can cover and like execute before the sun goes down is bananas to me, where I'm like literally the guy who's tripping over his laces and just
Nice.
Gets a half blurry shot and calls it art. Sometimes I'm like, this is what we've all been
I see
trying
him.
to achieve. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so that particular evening, I think the FOMO was multiple levels. There was FOMO of like, is this the best location for a photograph? Is if I point the camera this way, do I stay here and wait because this is photo pills and everything else tells me that this is where it's supposed to be. My past experience tells me this is where the best sunset's going to be. And then, staying in that moment, believing, I guess, being brave enough to stay put when you realize it's kicking off in the other direction behind you, but there's no composition behind you, which means you actually have to pick up stakes and move and go find another composition. And we've all done it. There's no winning. Like, you're not going to stumble into a perfect composition because it just took you forever to figure this one out.
Oh, yeah.
Why do you think you can just like find one in 2 seconds if you go this way? And in the middle of all that, I'm in my mind, I'm like, what is this video about? Like, what am I trying to tell people here? Like, I just having a breakdown on camera. If you go to my YouTube channel and you watch that video, there's like actual, the spinning ball of doom. Like that's what my brain felt like. Like the computer had locked up solid.
Nice.
I couldn't make a decision to save my life. And I don't know. I might be still carrying some trauma. Like I struggle sometimes doing sunset photography because as much as like you get all this lead time, when those perfect 2 minutes or whatever are going off for the sunset, it's not often anymore where I'm like okay with what I've picked. Like I'm always thinking like, is there a better? Where's the other best angle or whatever? So I have to work really hard to like tame that FOMO and just be in the moment and just be okay with what I'm shooting or find something. The other side of that, though, is that there are times, which you guys probably know, when you do decide to change it up and like just like throw a Hail Mary and you do find something incredible in that last moment. So it does work out from time to time. And I think that indecisiveness is just part of it. I think battling that with nature photography is always sort of there, being patient, trusting. Wildlife photography even more so. And I'm not what I wouldn't call myself a wildlife photographer. I am an opportunistic wildlife photographer.
Sure.
I would love to be more. I have friends who are into it here, and I'm asking them questions. Like, it's one of my goals this summer is to be a bit more intentional. I just feel like I have a lot of opportunities in Newfoundland for some cool stuff, but I'm on YouTube and other places looking for resources, and there's no quick fix there. That's like, it's putting time in, it's being patient, it's learning behavior, and I assume missing a lot.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
And you're right. I mean, I spent a week out in the field there 3 weeks ago, and to say I probably came home with 2 images that I might post. It's a drag. Well, I shouldn't say it's a drag. I mean, you're enjoying the experience. I spent 24 hours over 2 days in one location, hoping to see this sow with her cubs. And yeah, every time she came out, the cubs were in the wrong tree. We're in the conifer tree. We're behind mom. We're in the tall grass where the light was horrible. It was pouring rain. It was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
So and then you're wondering, well, okay, we know this is here, but what about over there? Maybe I should run over there, but it's an hour and 15 minutes to get over there. But but we're
as soon as you leave, then the sow and cubs are going to come out.
Oh yeah, right? But and then you're at a cell range. So we were actually using friends of ours. We're actually using that satellite version on the iPhone. And so in a place that we normally wouldn't get service, just saying, sow and cubs, or just giving you an indication, some moose out in the pond, or, that sort of thing. But then you have to make that decision whether or not to go there or stay here. And then, well, what about heading west? Oh, there might be a grizz there. Or, hey, let's go east because there's maybe some mountain goats and some ram. And then it's every minute constant. Of the day for me. And and then when they seen your FOMO article, oh, rabbit, or oh, a landscape, or oh, you're just, oh my God, I don't, there's got to be a drug for that, because I'm just
if only we knew a pharmacist.
Yeah. What would you prescribe for that?
There's some options for sure.
Yeah. It's fun. I mean, in the end, it's what we do. And I don't think it'll ever leave, but no.
But even when filming, I mean, Joe and I plan on filming. So we spent 8 days in Churchill. We're going to film all this stuff and this content.
All this B-roll and shooting.
Or we go out to Canon and we're going to shoot, we're going to film all this stuff, and we see grizzlies, and then now half the day's gone, right? So it's just, you got to focus, be in the moment, focus on what you're doing. Otherwise, it's just going to pull you away for sure.
I agree. And it's one of the things more and more, especially the last few years, that I'm realizing is that we're all capable of coming up with amazing ideas, amazing creative ideas. And the big thing that separates us all, I think, is the ones you choose to commit to and see through to the end, whether they're successful or not. Like, the hardest part is just finishing and ignoring all that other really cool, distracting stuff. Because and again, with the wildlife photography, you're going to get that moment where you're going to be rewarded for sitting on that one spot and not chasing something else. Yeah. And then when it does happen, like that's why your photo then becomes something that, you, not only you are proud of, but gets noticed and again, gets engagement and brings something to your community, because you chose to do what 99.9% of us, myself included, probably wouldn't choose to do, which is stay there in that one spot and just risk it and wait and be patient.
Sure.
But that's how it happens. Yeah. I mean, it does happen just, sporadically from time to time too. We all get lucky, but that's very unlikely. And it's certainly not, it's not the way to create not just like a business, but a career or a body of work, right? It's just by happenstance necessarily.
Sure.
So having intention sometimes for me is the goal. And I try to, I guess, if I'm struggling with FOMO and which way to point the camera and what rabbit to chase, I try to make my goal, my reward, having the intention and seeing it through, even if I don't get the shot.
Oh, that's a
It's
great
kind of
way
like,
to look
well,
at it.
you know what? I set out with this idea in mind. This is what I said I was going to do. I did it. Didn't really work the way I wanted, but I learned that I could tweak it or do this or do that. Or I also learned that maybe this was a bad idea and I'm not going to try that again. I'll try something else.
Great plan. Yeah.
But when I try to keep it in that frame of mind for myself, that's the intention. And sometimes the intention when I leave the house is to have no plan and just let it ride and see what happens. And so I still allow that side of my brain to have those moments where it's just like, let's just go out and chase light, or let's just go out and drive around for an hour and see what we find, and, you know, follow our gut a bit more. But I do find that I more and more, as I especially get older, I do take quite a lot of pleasure, I guess, or what I'm motivated by in my own work is when I do commit and see something through. And then I can actually say that, you know what, like from start to finish, it's not just like something I wrote down, an idea I had. I did actually like try to make it all the way through. And I have a thing at the end. Nobody's ever going to see it because it was garbage.
Sure.
But I have a thing. And I'm trying to do that. And I mean, it sounds like it's easy, but it's not, obviously, like, as we do get distracted. And
but I think, like you said, it's an age thing, right? You have to grow to become that and understand that in yourself, right?
Yeah.
Enjoy the process too. I mean, like take it all in, take nature, and, you know, while you're waiting, you know, the sounds of birds or the wind or whatever it is, just try and be grounded, like just really take in the environment. And if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. You had a great night or a great day sitting there and just enjoying the moment, right? So
I've defeated myself before leaving the house so many times in the past because in the morning I'll get up and say, okay, let's say I've got 5 hours of work I need to do. And then at the end of that 5 hours, I'm going to, you know, go out for a hike, go out. And then somewhere between my morning having that idea and the 5 hours of work, that little hike has become, well, if I go out, I should, you know, make sure I get a shot. Well, if I'm going to get a shot that I can be proud of, I probably should go to these locations because of the light or whatever it is that day. And if I'm going to go out and shoot that, then maybe I should get some BTS of that for like socials. And if I'm going to do BTS, then maybe I should actually do a video, like take my video gear out and actually do some real work. And if I'm going to do that, then maybe I'll help get a friend to come along and we'll get some really cool B-roll. And if I'm going to do that and go through all that trouble, then maybe I need to like write out a little narrative or a little script. And then, you know,
this has become a video production now, right?
It's gone from me waking up in the morning, with like, I've got 5 hours of work to do today, and then I'm going to reward myself with a nice little oceanside hike in the evening.
Yeah.
To I don't even want to start work because I'm so like wrapped up in like what I'm going to do tonight, and not because I'm excited about what I'm going to do, but I feel all this pressure now to create the cinematic masterpiece on my hike tonight, right? Yeah. And so like the whole day gets thrown off. That happens to me way too much. So I'm trying really hard to push back at that. Like the other night I went out and I was like, I'm giving myself, the goal is to take a photo of the ocean. Not a good photo, not a photo I haven't taken before. Not something that needs to be documented for anyone else to see. It's like, I'm just going to go out and take a photo of the ocean. And I went out with a couple friends and I ended up taking a photo of them that I really, really like. It's like very, I found it to be like kind of a special photo for me. I wasn't expecting to take. And I did take some photos of the ocean that I don't know if I'll ever do anything with them. They're not good. They're not bad. They're not great. Yeah. But I know that I enjoyed that night, that experience, and I was happily rewarded with like a lovely memory of my friends, that photo that I took.
Excellent.
And so, yeah, I guess like for me personally, that's kind of a little bit of a way forward, like fighting with those FOMO demons and the distraction demons and everything else is just to make it super low stakes again, to to kind of get off that train of producing content.
Yeah,
Sure.
I hear you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Well,
hear you.
even the behind the scenes stuff, right? I mean, you always plan on, okay, oh, wait, we need to record behind the scenes of this. Oh, wait, we need. So now, like, I mean, it's been over the last few weeks, actually, I've decided, okay, well, I'm going to, walk around with the 360 camera. It's just going to record everything. I ended up picking up a Pocket Osmo 3, right? So we actually had a workshop this past weekend. We just picked that up and just recorded content. You don't have to set up your big gear. Yes, it doesn't have to be a big, huge Netflix production all the time. It can be nice behind the scenes, and those cameras pick up some great stuff. And at the end of the day, content is king, as they say, right? So just capturing something and putting it out there that doesn't feel as forced, almost feels more natural.
I've been doing this photo gig in the Antarctica for a long time now. And part of the job, you produce sort of a take home. It used to be a slideshow of images.
Okay.
And now it's evolved into like a film almost of the trip. And not everybody, but I know that I do it and some other people do it. And I've seen other photographers work, and sometimes a lot of the video is just shot on their phones.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
Or what they'll do is they'll crowdsource phone footage from some of the guests and some of the other guides and stuff like that, and they'll put it together. And I honestly will say that some of the best little short films of these trips often come from people's cell phone footage, because it's so impromptu and casual and real and authentic.
Right.
You're capturing like voice and video at the same time, and none of it at top quality. But as far as like a time capsule, like memory piece film, it honestly is like an amazing tool, and quite often like I said, some of the best footage that I've seen down there as a way of documenting what it really is like, what the experience actually is.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I mean, you end up recording something. Oh, I didn't like that. Let me do that again. Well, does it really feel as authentic and natural as it should?
And if I try to get like a little like audio or a little video interview clip from some of the guests, and I rock up with, sound gear and a tripod and a small rigged out with a monitor on, like, there's no way, like,
deer in the headlights,
like, dude. Just came here for some icebergs, like,
totally.
Can you maybe touch base, Curtis, on your workshops and classes on your website? I see you do have classes, you do offer some one-on-ones, that sort of thing. Do you want to just maybe just chat about Offbeat too? We just recently had Dave and Lee and Paul and all those guys, all the other members, and hopefully we'll have Chris on soon. But if you want to touch base on that and how that came about.
So I do teach. I do a lot of photo education, guiding kind of stuff, and that's become more and more. It's kind of come out of that world of travel photography and commercial photography. I do less and less of that stuff now, the commercial stuff anyways, and more guiding and even and education. But a lot of my work sometimes in the field is straight up guiding with just a touch or a hint of video or photo work, which is fine because I enjoy that work. But I realized a handful of years ago that I do enjoy teaching photography, yes, but I enjoy bringing people places and experiencing those places with them through that sort of avenue of photography. And the time that we spend out there together and watching them push themselves, whether it's like comfort zone of like they didn't think they could get across this river to get a photo of a waterfall, or they've never done astro and they're just not comfortable being out in the dark playing with their camera. That kind of stuff I really enjoy, and I like those experiences with people. Obviously, I like doing it all over the world. That's part of the deal too. I like doing it in my own backyard. But more and more trying to develop classes, I think that I enjoy talking about. So online classes, one-on-ones, things like that for very specific, if people have like, something they really, really specifically want to address or become more comfortable with. And workshops and photo tours. That's a big part of it for sure. in particular, for me, that was like a part of, we spoke earlier about my journey from pharmacy to the next thing.
Mm-hmm.
And a big part of it for me was deciding at some point to not go to school for this, but to seek out mentorships and workshops. And that really, really helped me. And I think it helped me grow. I think it definitely pushed me out of my comfort zone. It probably, given my background in university as a pharmacist, might have been more comfortable for me to go back to school and like get into that groove again. But to get outside and to travel and put myself in that position. Sometimes when, it's like the hardest thing to do in a group of photographers is to be the photographer that gets up in front of the rest of them and has to demonstrate something or answer a question, right? And I think we all feel like that. We all feel like that photographer. So it's nice to have the experience from the teaching side and as a student to know that we're all kind of in that same headspace. And I like that. I like being that bridge for people. And the early days of me kind of walking down that path, I met people like, Dave Brosha and Paul Zlitzka. And that was back before Offbeat was a thing. And I took classes from both of them individually at some point. And then a couple workshops with them. They were co-leading again before Offbeat. And somewhere in that mix, they formed Offbeat, and they asked me and a few other people in the beginning to sort of come on as, I don't even know what the name or the title was at that point. But I think they're called Offbeat Pros now, but people who would help lead these workshops and help teach people. And that was a huge opportunity for me. And I was so happy that they trusted me with that. And it was really where it all started to come together, because I was getting a lot of practice doing it at that point. And having just had come from living in that world as a participant and as a student, to transition into like assisting and then guiding, teaching, and then becoming like a leader, and then running my own workshops and classes. And now, co-owning the company with Dave and Paul and Chris has been like a really big career arc for me that I'm quite happy and proud of. And I'm really glad that this is the trajectory that it took for me.
Look where you came from, right? And now you're doing this. So that's amazing. Yeah. Congrats. Yeah.
So I guess for yourself, you teach workshops, you do the one-on-ones. Where do you find, where do you get your learning, I guess, from? Where do you get inspiration from? I'm a big YouTube guy. I find so much information. I love to learn. I continue to learn. I'm still, signing up for seminars and online stuff just to continue my education. So where do you find yours? Is it primarily YouTube, other photographers?
Yeah. I agree with you. Like I'm the same way. Like I love learning. I love, pushing myself again, like not staying comfortable for too long. And, YouTube is definitely a place for me to find inspiration, other photographers, but just, and again, because I'm doing more and more video work, like filmmakers, I think like I get a lot from, and it's just maybe my personality, but I love watching stand-up comedians. I love watching improv comics. I subscribe to a lot of Substacks and mailing lists for authors that I like. Like storytellers and stuff like that. I'll go to storytelling events in different cities, just watch people get up on stage and tell stories. Like that kind of stuff really inspires me, motivates me. And I try to I guess, bring some version of all of those experiences, the things that light me up, into my world. And then, the hard part is then how do you translate that and put something out there that other people might want to sign up for or take part in, that isn't directly exactly these things that, I witnessed, right? Through the filter of my work, my experience, and the way that I teach, trying to find an audience for that. And, so there's no, I guess I don't have a formula for it. I mean, I'm working this summer. I'm hoping to put out 2 new online classes, and I'm working through those steps right now. I kind of know what they're going to be about, but I also want to figure out, well, what sets them apart, not in the sense of better than what's out there, but what sets them apart and that makes it unique to me. And, the thing about photography or art, whatever your discipline is, or storytelling, writing, repairing cars, it doesn't matter. YouTube's a great example of this. There's so much of everybody doing everything, and a lot of it's the same, but still a lot of these people, have huge communities of subscribers that love watching, and myself included. And a lot of it comes down to the people that are doing the content themselves and how they teach. And so, there's a lot of different ways. Yeah. If I want to do a course on ocean seascape photography, then, there's a lot of that already out there. So what I'd like to be able to bring to that is, what's uniquely me. And so for what's uniquely me is, like I just said, I like stand-up comedy. I like storytelling, like live storytelling. I like history and culture. And, there's got to be elements of that in the kind of courses that I build, whether it's in person or online, or it's just going to feel like kind of a version of what anybody could make.
Sure. Yeah.
And again, I don't pretend that what I'm making is better than what anyone else makes, but at least when I look at it, I could say, oh yeah, but that's very much mine. That's my version of whatever, because we're all kind of, I think the whole point is to, if you're teaching or educating in some way, shape or form, very few of us are coming up with completely new, novel, never before existed concepts.
Absolutely.
Especially in the world of something like photography. So really what we have to offer is like our take on it. So when I'm building the classes, I think that's what I'm trying to draw from. Not so much what is the class about, but how can I teach it that resonates best with myself. And therefore I hope people like that find it as well.
Well, we talked to Paul as well before, and he when he started doing workshops, he talked about, he thought people were just going to come, they want to learn about aperture and shutter speed. No, they want to shoot with him or learn from him and be with him for, so it's the same thing. You're not only selling your classes, you're selling yourself, right? That people want to be with you and see you and spend some time with you.
We have, and it's kind of like taking a bit of a hiatus, but it's still a thing, and hopefully a thing that will be back up and flying again next summer. But we, Renee and I have a company here in Newfoundland called Newfound Shores, and it's specifically photo workshops here in Newfoundland. And in the past, we've done a lot of environmental portrait stuff and landscapes and seascapes and getting people sort of like in period piece costumes and going to these locations like Viking settlements on the Northern Peninsula and stuff, and really immersing ourselves in that world, natural light, off camera flash, whatever. And it's become this thing where we thought, we'll teach people how to do portraits in environments, work through the technicalities of it and how to like work with models and stuff. But it very quickly, like we realized that it's so much more than that. There was a very specific moment where I was waiting for a group of like 16 people to show up for this sunset shoot. And, it's going on 7, 7:30. Nobody's coming. I'm like, where's everybody? So I'm like on the little Facebook group trying to like check in, like, hey guys, what's going on? And I get this one text back from one of the participants saying, oh, we had dinner together as a group. And then there was a pub next to the restaurant and some live music was on stage. So we just ordered a couple drinks, and now they're at this pub and they're listening to live Newfoundland music, like, which is amazing. And instead of like coming to shoot with Renee and I, they've decided as a group to chill out and take in some Newfoundland culture. And they legitimately texted me, is like, do you guys want us to save you a seat? You should head in here. And I'm like, who's in charge? Who's running this workshop? What's happening here? But it was a big eye-opening moment where like Paul was saying, like, I think I had these expectations of people showing up specifically for the learning of how to do X, Y, and Z. And a lot of it, the magic is in sort of these moments in between where they're just like taking in culture and learning about a place and meeting new people and the fellowship of just like traveling together and taking in those those kinds of in-between moments. There's a big piece of the puzzle, and my schedule was hectic. Like, I hadn't allowed for anything like that. So now when we build these workshops, there is a lot more of that built into it intentionally.
Meet and greet night.
Definitely.
Stuff like that for sure. Yeah. Oh, even light chasers. I mean, you go looking to watch these presentations, but being with people for 4 days straight, the same like-minded individuals and just spending time with them, that's a lot what it's about too, right? So
yeah.
Yeah. Well, even with workshops, you get through the technical stuff, you help out with, a couple of PowerPoints and that sort of thing, but it's getting to know them. I mean, this past one was a lot of fun. These people were just amazing, so funny. The days flew by, now we have good friends, so
Absolutely.
I guess it's what you make of it, but you
and a few chat GPT images of us that I don't want to see.
Oh my God.
Are you guys like little action figures, those ones? Are you in a box set?
No. So we had the opportunity to, because, Chris is a big Calgary Flames fan, and Rob was a big Edmonton Oilers fan. And we took some photos. We found a huge antler, a huge elk shed. And Chris put it over his shoulder and stuff like that. And then the next thing you know, Rob's like, "Hey, is there any way you can incorporate this into this afternoon's learning session?" So I said, "I got it." So what he did was he used ChatGPT and created an Oilers jersey, while he was holding this antler and everything like that. So I just just had it on Photoshop or in Photoshop. So when it was my time to, give my little demo or whatever, so boom. And oh my God, Chris just lost it. So now they're fighting.
Not the surprise you had hoped for.
Now they're fighting back and forth with, my God.
I have to defend Rob. He's actually a Flames fan, but he knew I have a disdain for the Oilers.
Oh, is he? He's a Flames fan? Oh,
so
okay.
He knew, and this would be about the time I'd put the image on the screen, but good thing I know the editor and it won't be there.
He knew how much it would hurt. As a fellow Flames fan.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
And then he told us about a bear spray story where it actually went off in his vehicle while he was camping, I think up in Alaska or something. So all of a sudden now
he sprayed himself in the face accidentally.
Chris is creating all these Photoshop images of bear spray and they're just going. So I guess the long and short of it is, you make friends, you have a good time, whether they even remember the educational component of it, which, we hope we do. I mean, in the end, it was just so much fun. And
it's an experience.
You have friends and stuff right now. So
totally. I truly believe, like, for myself, and I think for a lot of people, the people learn best, or they retain the information best. They remember it when when they can create some sort of emotional connection to it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so like going out and just, like delivering the basics and the nuts and bolts. There's a chance one or two of them are going to take something away from that. But I think that, when you have like stories like you guys said, and there's like that fellowship and that community and like good times and sharing going on, even if they think that they're, if you put pen on paper and told them to take a multiple choice exam, maybe they'd fail on what, in that moment you had been talking about to teach or whatever. But I bet you if they're out in the field and they're like trying to figure out settings or something like that, they'll think back, they'll connect it to that time they spent. Yeah. And
sure.
And it'll come back to them.
Oh, no, I totally get that. So much fun. So I was going to ask you about any current projects, but it sounds like you're creating a course, or you're going to be working on your course this summer. Are you experiencing any big challenges right now as far as your career, or does everything just seem to be on the right trajectory for you, and excited to keep moving forward and create more content? And
you're not going to go back and be a pharmacist again, are you?
No way. That ship's long gone. I'm not even allowed legally to do that. It's that license has been outdated for a long time.
So it's all under the table is what you're saying. Got it?
Only behind the buildings in the alleys now. That's the only place
for the FOMO, of course. Yeah.
I think. I mean, I am excited about it. I think like all small business owners and entrepreneurs and creative people, you go through highs and lows with this kind of thing. It's definitely still, as I've been doing it long enough now to trust the process.
Yeah.
But I still have my moments where, you go a month or so with like nothing on the horizon and you're thinking like, well, that's it. Like my ride's over. I had my time. It was fun. Met a lot of people, that kind of thing. And then inevitably something does turn up, and that's kind of just what it's like. My example for this year is I've been with a company in the Antarctic photo guiding for the last 3 seasons. Been with them for 5 seasons, but we had a couple of pandemic ones in the last 3, and they just decided to shut down their operations down there. So all of us guides that were working for that company then were thrown back out into like the main kind of like we're all like homeless and jobless for a little bit. Now everybody, kind of gets sucked up into the guiding industry and gets placed with other companies and on different ships and stuff like that. And that's what we're all kind of dealing with and going through right now, which is great. But it is like one of those things where I was incredibly happy with that group, that team we had built, and the company. Everybody was like amazing at what they did. And I really was hoping to, semi-retire with that team a little bit for that part of my career anyways, the Antarctic stuff. And so now it's more about like, okay, I've got some resumes out. I've got some contracts lined up with other companies, trying to build up that excitement, that enthusiasm, that motivation to be part of a new team. It'll all come together. But that's kind of like a thing that I'm not struggling with, but just like navigating right now. Sometimes when you have sort of everything all lined up and just season after season, it just gets better and it works. You kind of get into this pattern of, well, this is a really great part of my year. You look forward to it. And then for whatever reason, it gets disrupted. It's not a necessarily bad thing because who knows what's on the other side of this, but it is.
It's a great attitude. Yeah.
Positive outlook for sure.
Positive outlook. Yeah. Chris has a song just for that.
No, I'm not singing that
it's
song.
It's called the Positivity Song.
In my corporate world, I was, I've left the corporate world many years ago because of negativity. I'm just trying to be as positive as I can, right? I'm trying to live in a positive mindset. And as I would tell Joe, it is what it is, man. So,
and that's kind of that's a great, because I'm trying to do that with this summer. I'm here in Newfoundland and I haven't been here for a significant amount of time in like 3 years. I've been home for like a couple of weeks at a time. Now I'm here until the end of August, and I'm trying to figure out, I've got, some work that I'll be doing, but I do have a lot of just me time, family time, Newfoundland time. Awesome. And that was somewhat by design. And, and I wanted to make time for kind of figuring out what some of these other things could be, these other projects, a couple of like classes. I really enjoy writing, and I haven't done enough of it in the past, 8 or 10 months.
You're
very good at it.
Your writing's insane.
Yes. Well, thank you. And that's something I really enjoy. And I'm trying to, the problem I have myself, I struggle with giving myself permission to do that kind of stuff if it doesn't directly, like the next day, relate to like income. You know what I mean? Like, if this doesn't pay somehow,
get that.
How do I continue to give it time? Even though it's something that pays in like pleasure for myself, it gives me great headspace to live in. I enjoy doing it. And I know that once I get past the blank sheet in front of me and I start writing, on the other side of that is engagement. Like we talked about at the beginning, is community. Like just you guys responding to it just right now is exactly, for me, is the kind of thing that lights me up. Not because you're giving me like accolades, but because it's a thing that was in my brain and somebody else also can relate to the thing that was in my brain. That's exciting for me. And so I do want to spend some time this summer getting back into writing, and I'm trying to figure out what that means. Like like I said earlier, I need goals or projects. I'm not good at just doing it just because.
Sure.
So I need to figure out what that's going to be.
There's not very many times I'm reading something that I actually laugh out loud or feel totally connected with, but I tell you, that happened with your stuff. So that's very well done, man.
Thank you.
I like that you said you have to give yourself permission to enjoy other things. I have multiple hobbies, but there's certain ones I haven't touched in months because like you said, well, is this going to bring me income, or is this going to get me to the next, step towards this or that? And, I think you got to give yourself some time to uh, kind of put your business aside to just, even if it's just for an hour, go
Yeah.
and do, I don't know, tie some flies, or just, like you said, write or paint, or just, or, garden, whatever it is that you love to do. Um, because it's stressful. I mean, well, as both of you know, it can be some very, very long days, and
Hmm.
you just need
Mhm.
that mental break for sure. I totally get
I
that.
remember when I was a pharmacist
Mhm.
and I was thinking about, what else I could do. And I was starting to look into the world of like design school and
Mhm.
stuff like that. And I wasn't really thinking about photography as much. Uh, I I look back on that time now, and my weekends and my evenings just seem so uh, like great. Like there was so much joy. I was so fulfilled
Mhm.
in those evenings and weekends because I was doing all this other stuff with like no there was no connection to motivation or whatever from this world of like how do I, not even like economically and financially, but how
Mhm.
do I connect this to building myself up for the purpose of whatever.
Mhm.
I was just doing it because it was
Yeah.
fun.
Yep. Exactly.
And then when I look back on now as a photographer and like, and not, a business owner,
Mhm.
it's really hard to disconnect everything you do from what you do for a living kind of
Mhm.
thing. So especially when those things align so often, right? Like writing, even though I'm not making money as a writer, could very easily fall into this content creation world that we all kind of currently live in
Yep.
as photographers
Mhm.
and videographers and stuff. And so when I sit down to write, it's like, quickly becomes, well, this is what I was about to write about, but how could I reframe this so that it becomes a blog post or part of a
Sure
book
enough.
potentially,
Yeah.
Exactly.
or part
Yeah.
of an online course or a
Mhm.
workshop or a talk or a presentation at Light Chasers.
Mhm.
And yeah, and then it's just gone. Like that little
Yeah.
spark of just like creating for creating's sake, it kind of
Absolutely.
goes away.
The work to life
That's a
balance
tough
is a
one.
little hard being a business owner in the same
Yeah.
genre, right? Yeah, for sure.
Oh, I
Yeah.
totally get that. Well, Curtis, we're gonna wrap things up here, but I just, of course, we have this question we usually ask at the end, and it has to do with sharing some, some tips or some wisdom for aspiring nature photographer, adventure photographers. I mean, your story is certainly inspiring, but
Hmm.
what would you tell somebody that just telling your 18-year-old self kind of thing?
To
Put you
inspire
on.
them to,
Yeah, I mean,
Just
like
starting out kind of
just
thing. Where
starting
would
out,
you?
like,
yeah.
well, what
Yeah.
would you tell them
Um,
to,
In this day
um,
and age, I guess.
well,
Yeah.
yeah, and that's a
right,
tough
right. Yeah.
one. That's
Yeah.
a lot different than back when you started or when we all started. But yeah, for
Yeah,
today.
it's hard. I mean, I love this question because it is hard to answer because it's like whatever advice I give to an 18-year-old that might watch this, they're not going to listen to because I
True,
wouldn't.
oh, true enough.
Okay, a
True
When
enough.
30-year-old then.
A
when I was
30-year-old.
18,
Yeah.
yeah. I think I
Yeah.
think that for me, it's one of the biggest things is that I keep coming back to is giving yourself permission.
Hmm.
Uh, you know, to just to try it, like giving your. It's really easy if you want to be a photographer in any genre, but it's really easy just to like play it safe and do what you see other people doing.
Hmm.
Uh, but there's always going to be a part of us, I think, that wants to do something that's very uniquely us. And it's hard sometimes to hear that voice,
Hmm.
that part of ourselves. And when you do clue into it or hear it, I think it's really important to give yourself permission uh, to chase that rabbit. We'll say, to tie it back in,
Yeah. Yeah.
to to go against a little bit what everybody else is doing. If it doesn't feel exactly like what you want to do, I think it's really, really important to as quickly as you can get yourself to that point of
Hmm.
becoming what's truly you. And that's really hard to do because I mean there's so much out there, and especially if you're trying to balance like money and portfolio and body of work and all that kind of stuff. But at a certain point, I think we all do get to that point. And when you do start feeling that a bit more, I think you should definitely devote energy and time and resources to following it. The biggest takeoffs in my career have been when I took those little chances, those little risks that I felt very uncomfortable with in the beginning, but also sort of felt the most like me to try.
Sure. Yeah.
Those are the ones that, years later somehow have paid off in even financially, professionally, financially, creatively, those things. So listening to that little bit, kind of figuring that out as soon as you can. But also the other big thing is going back to what we were talking about, is having intention, setting like actual intention in what you're doing. It's, again, even if that intention is just to be wild and free and go and create with no purpose, that was the goal, that was the intention. So for me to be able to build something up from nothing, to attack that blank white page, to a point where it eventually, say, for example, turns into an online class, it doesn't serve me anymore to just randomly go out with my camera, take photos of whatever kind of interests me, maybe document it, maybe not with video, and see if I can cobble that together into some sort of thing afterwards. Sometimes that works, but I find that going out with the intention of like a plan and having something, even if that plan at the end was not a good one or it didn't work out the way I wanted it to, I learned something from that.
Oh, for sure.
And I think that there's still a lot of value in not having a plan, but as long as that was the plan, I guess, you know what I mean? Like, as long as your point was to go out and not have a plan and just have fun and just create.
That's still the plan.
That's still the plan.
Yeah.
And that can lead to some great stuff. But I know that for me, I find it really difficult to see any kind of upward trajectory and any kind of like build in my own work and my own life if I'm not paying attention and being somewhat intentional with those building blocks.
Excellent.
No, fair enough. Absolutely.
Wow. No, that's great. Great advice, Curtis. I just want to say this was a great episode, truly inspiring. We love your work. We love your writing. Chris and I were talking about about your writing earlier. It's so different, unique, but we really appreciate you coming on. It was we're happy that you agreed to come on when we saw you at Light Chasers.
Yeah, it was great seeing you again.
Yeah, so thanks again, man. Thanks for being on.
My pleasure, guys.
Yeah, you bet.
Thanks for asking me. And thanks for being great hosts. Like sometimes, we do these things and it's some of them are not that easy, but you guys host well. You make it easy for people like me.
We really appreciate that. So, yeah, exactly. So, thanks again, Curtis, and thanks everyone for watching another episode here of the Nature Photo Guys, and we'll catch you in the next video.
Thanks for watching.
Before we wrap up, we'd like to thank the Camera Store for supporting the Nature Photo Guys podcast.
They're a legendary name in photography, and their support helps us keep bringing you these episodes.
Don't forget to check them out at thecamerastore.com for all your photography and video needs.
Thanks for joining us on the Nature Photo Guys podcast. If you have any questions, contact us at info@thenaturePhotoGuys.ca or message us on Facebook and Instagram at the Nature Photo Guys podcast. Visit YouTube and subscribe to our channel to watch all our latest videos. Or follow and listen to our latest podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or on our website at thenaturePhotoGuys.ca. We'll catch you next time on the Nature Photo Guys podcast.